Good evening and welcome everyone to this talk by Gideon Levy, The Israelis and the Occupation, a Story of Denial. My name is Sama Sabawi and I'm your host for this evening. I want to begin by acknowledging that we stand on Wurundjeri land, Aboriginal land. The Wurundjeri, like the Palestinians, never ceded sovereignty over this land, and we honor and stand, too, with their struggle for justice. We acknowledge the elders of the Wurundjeri and all our elders who have brought us to this place tonight. Tonight's event has been sponsored by 3 organizations. The Australian Jewish Democratic Society, who for 33 years have been a Jewish voice amongst progressives and a progressive voice amongst Jews. As well as supporting justice in Israel-Palestine, they advocate for social justice, particularly for indigenous and refugee rights. The second organization is Australians for Palestine. Australians for Palestine are a Melbourne-based advocacy organization who have been particularly active in BDS campaigning and were the initiators of the Run for Palestine. The third sponsor is the Australian Palestine Advocacy Network, a membership-based national peak advocacy group. APAN have been in Canberra with Gideon this week, where he met with parliamentarians across the political spectrum. Please make sure that before you leave this room tonight, you are in touch with at least one of these organizations, so you can be part of the growing movement for justice for Palestinians. There is also an information and resources table in the foyer, which we invite you to visit. The format for this evening is that I will invite our guests to give a 40-minute presentation. We will then have a time for discussion, and there will be an opportunity for some questions from the audience. Tonight's event is being filmed and live streamed on Facebook, so we ask that you keep this in mind when you're asking your question from the foyer. And now I have the great pleasure to introduce our guest speaker, Mr. Gideon Levy. Mr. Levy grew up in Israel. He is a son of Holocaust-surviving parents. He served in the army before serving as spokesman for Shimon Peres when he was the leader of the Israeli Labor Party. Gideon Levy is a Haaretz columnist and a member of the newspaper's editorial board. He is the author of the weekly Twilight Zone feature, which has covered the Israeli occupation in the West Bank and Gaza over the last 25 years, as well as the writer of political editorials for the newspaper. Levy joined Haaretz in 1982 and spent 4 years as the newspaper's deputy editor. Levy's writing has earned him numerous awards, including the Emil Brunswick Human Rights Award in 1996 by the Association for Civil Rights in Israel, the Anna Lent Foundation Journalism Award in 2008 for an article he wrote about Palestinian children killed by Israeli forces, and the Peace Through Media Award in 2012, the Leipzig Freedom Prize in 2001, the Israeli Journalists Union Prize in 1997. He has been described as a powerful liberal voice by the New York Times columnist Thomas Friedman, and praised by Johann of The Independent as the heroic Israeli journalist. He has been profiled in Le Monde and Der Spiegel. He is the author of Twilight Zone, Life and Death Under the Israeli Occupation, and has addressed the U.S. National Press Club and many other forums as well. His new book, The Punishment of Gaza, has just been published by Verso Publishing House in London and in New York. I'm very pleased now to invite Mr. Levy to speak to us.
Thank you so much. I was never sold out in Israel. I doubt whether so many people would have come to listen to me in Israel, and that's a very good reason to come here. I would like first of all to thank all the good people who brought me here, all those good people and organizations who arranged this unbelievable, unforgettable visit here. We both, Catherine and I, fall in love with Australia after 1 week. We are only 1 week here, and unfortunately, tonight is our last night in Australia. And we can't tell you how sorry we are to leave this lovely country. We made so many new friends, we met so many nice people. In Canberra, I felt quite at home. I had even a more surprising experience. I realized, I always thought that the Israeli right-wingers are the worst. And I must tell you, and I really thought it cannot get worse. And I must tell you that from this point of view, it was really inspiring and encouraging, because we have still something to look forward to. Some things that I heard in Canberra, I never heard in Israel. And this was really a refreshment in a way. And I will carry it back to Israel. From now on, Avigdor Lieberman and Benjamin Netanyahu are models of human rights. But I'm really grateful to the people organizing tonight, to Jessica, to Nasser, to all the good people who brought us here. And we leave Australia with very, very big feelings. Samach mentioned some of my stations in my life. I never heard that Tom Friedman writing it about me. Maybe he did, give me the quote. But in any case, what is very important, and thank you for your generosity, but what is very important to mention here tonight in the beginning of my lecture is the fact that I was brought up as a typical Israeli being present in Israel of the 50s, of the 60s, a typical product of Israeli education system, a typical product of Israeli media, a typical product, I would say, even of Israeli brainwash system. I was a good boy, Tel Aviv. I was trained to believe that we are the Israelis, we are always right, and the Arabs are always wrong. That we are the David, the poor little David who fights against this huge Goliath. That the Arabs have only one thing in their mind, and this is how to kick us to the ocean. We were told to believe that we are always right, and they are always wrong. And it took me many, many years. Samach, you mentioned all my sins, including working for Shimon Peres, things that in serving in the Israeli army, things that I'm not sure I would have done today, but I was foolish enough, stupid enough, and young enough in those years to do all those things. And it was only in my late 20s, early 30s, when I started as a journalist to travel to the occupied territories quite incidentally, and gradually, year after year, week after week, I realized that I know nothing. And I realized how wrong was I in all those years. I remember me as a child, as a teenager, watching those ruins, the very few ruins that you can still see, which were not covered up with forests and trees. And I never asked myself, what are those ruins? Where are the landlords? Where are the owners? Where are those people who built it? Why are they ruins? Never asked myself. I think I was maybe 20 when I first heard the word Nakba. I never heard about it before. And it took me so many years while traveling to the occupied territories, gradually, to stop to be this good boy Tel Aviv and to become what you described as a very bad boy Tel Aviv, or maybe, as the independents say, the most hated Israeli. I'm not sure I deserve this, but I will be very proud to be the most hated Israeli if this is the cause. And then I realized throughout those regular trips, journalistic trips, that there is a big drama taking place, and the Israelis know about it nothing. And there is a big drama taking place, and the Israelis hardly discuss it. And then, throughout the years, I start to ask myself, how can it be? How can it be that for 50 years, Israel, this liberal democracy, the only democracy in the Middle East, can have such a brutal tyranny in its backyard, and Israeli public opinion wouldn't care, wouldn't discuss, wouldn't ask questions, wouldn't be troubled, wouldn't have any doubts? Because 50 years, and the occupation is now 50 years old, let us call it the first 50 years, because the end of the occupation is as far as never before. The first 50 years were so pleasant for us Israelis. The first 50 years created a society in denial which I cannot recall one more example of a society which lives in such denial, knowing so little and wanting to know even less. And I kept on asking myself, how can it be possible? Because we are not dealing with an occupation which is overseas. It is 20 minutes away from our homes, in the backyard. How come that the people, which some of you know Israelis, believe me, they are not monsters, most of them, there are some, but most of them are not monsters. A state that sends rescue teams whenever there is a catastrophe in the world, the Israelis are the first one to be there. Field hospitals, experts, any catastrophe, earthquake, floods, any catastrophe, they are the first one. Try to be an old lady who tries to cross a street in Tel Aviv. So many people will help you to cross the road many times, even if you don't want to cross the road. People with values. How can it be that when it comes to the occupation, there is even not a discussion? And after 50 years, the Israelis, most of us, if not all of us, were trained to believe that the occupation is, some normal phenomena in life, like the fact that today is Thursday, like the fact that spring comes after winter. There is also an occupation, such a normal phenomena, and we are taught to live with it without any special thoughts. Yes, there is an occupation. We have now a new trend in Israel, which is even more outrageous. There is no occupation. I heard it also in Canberra, people are talking like this. There is no occupation at all. What are you talking about? There is no occupation. This is, by the way, quite new. Because until a few years ago, at least, we knew that there is some elephant in the room, but we wouldn't look at it. Now we are being told more and more that maybe there is no elephant at all. There is no occupation. There is nothing like occupying another people in your own homeland. And God had promised us this land. Don't you remember? And Abraham, our father, was walking on those stones. Doesn't it give us a full right to stay there? Yes, there are 4.5 million Palestinians there, but this is totally irrelevant. God had promised us. And still I was asking myself, how can it be that so little question marks are being raised? And throughout the years I tried to get to some kind of analysis of the Israeli society, which I'd like to share with you tonight. And I believe, and Samach, you heard it already, I'm sorry, this part you heard. I repeat myself, yes, I'm a singer of one song, but at least one song
It's a really good song.
And there are three sets of beliefs, of values in Israeli society, which enable us Israelis not to ask questions. And the first thing, which is very deep-rooted in Israeli society, which I'd like to mention here, is the belief of most of us, if not all of us, that we are the chosen people. Religious people obviously will believe in it, but also the seculars, they might phrase it in a different way, but by the end of the day, we know better. We are better. We are the best in everything. And nobody will tell us what to do, because we were chosen to be the chosen people. The international law is a wonderful invention. It's a wonderful tool. It applies to any country. It was brought after the horrifying events in World War II. It is a very just tool, but it doesn't apply on us, because we are different. Absorbing some refugees from Africa is really something important that the West should do. We can't, because we are different. 40,000 African asylum seekers that are still in Israel will be expelled because we cannot. Europe can, Jordan can absorb 1 million Syrians, but we can, because we are different. Don't ask us for things that we are different. We are chosen and nobody will tell us what to do. To this you have to add another set of beliefs, or another basic belief, based on history, that we are not only the biggest victims in history, we the Jews, we are the only victim in history. Don't you dare to call, for example, the Armenian genocide as Holocaust, because we have copyright on this. Nobody will dare to call any other catastrophe as Holocaust. And not that the Holocaust was not the greatest tragedy in history or the greatest crime in history. No doubt it was. No misunderstanding. But there is no room in our belief to other catastrophes. Not only this, as victims of the Holocaust, or as the only victims of human history, again, we have rights that others don't have. Or if I phrase it in the words of this unforgettable, ignorant woman called Golda Meir, then Prime Minister of Israel, who once said that after the Holocaust, the Jews have the right to do whatever they want. This is quite deep-rooted in Israeli way of believing or of running our life, the belief that after the Holocaust, nobody is going to tell us what to do. Not only this, there were longer occupations in history. There were more brutal occupations in history, but I cannot recall one example in history in which the occupier perceives himself as the victim. This occupation was imposed on us. We don't want it. We never wanted it. We are victims. Or again, as the unforgettable Golda Meir phrased it, we will never forgive the Palestinians for forcing us to kill their children. We are the victims. We shoot their children, yes, but we don't want it. We are forced to do so. Every soldier who stands in a checkpoint and sees a child of 12 or 14 with scissors in his hand, he has to kill him because that's a terrorist. We are protecting ourselves, we are the victims, and we need to execute all those terrorists. So being the victims enable us, again, to live in peace with what we are doing, because we are the only victims. And the third basic belief or basic value in Israeli society, and it must be phrased in a very careful way, is the belief that the Palestinians, and be very careful, are not exactly human beings like us. They don't love their children like we do. They don't mourn their children if they are killed like we do. They are not exactly as human as we are. They were born to kill. They are brutal. They are cruel. They want one thing. There is only one thing in their mind, how to push us to the ocean. There is nothing else that preoccupies them except of this one thing, to kill as many Jews as possible. If you stretch under the skin of every Israeli, or almost every Israeli, you will find maybe the biggest obstacle for any kind of change, the belief that they are not exactly like us. And if they are not exactly like us, then there is no question of human rights, because we are not dealing exactly with human beings. For sure they are not intelligent as us. I remember once an interview in Israeli TV with a Palestinian Israeli member of parliament, and it was half in joke and half serious. The interviewer asked him, Dr. Tibi, what are you? Are you a doctor or are you a Palestinian? Because it doesn't go together. This feeling that the Palestinians not only don't possess the same rights, which goes without saying, but are not as equal human beings as they should have been perceived, is maybe the biggest obstacle. To this you have to add the one and only religion in Israel, the informal religion, which is obviously workshopping security. Security is our informal religion. Have you ever heard the combination of two words, security for the Palestinians? Was it ever discussed in any kind of peace process, peace plans, ever? Anybody spoke about security in the context of the Palestinians? No, it's always in the context of Israel, because Israel is the victim. And security enables us to do almost whatever we want, because that's our ritual, that is our religion. And on behalf of security, we can do everything. Anything. When you say security, mouths are shut in Israel, because this is the religion, this is the ritual. So we will not ask any questions about the unbelievable budgets that go for security. Israel needs 6 submarines, not less than this, because it is for security. And security covers up everything. Those of the Australian politicians and journalists who participated in those brainwash missions to Israel, organized by God knows whom, are all coming back, or almost all coming back with this belief. What do you want from the Israelis? They are fighting for their security. It's all about security. Every Israeli who wakes up in the morning is in an existential danger. And how can you judge those people? They live in a constant danger. Israel is killing hundreds of women and children in Gaza in 2014. It's all about our security. People in Gaza have nowhere to. It was maybe the first war, 2014, without refugees, because people didn't have where to run away. And it is on behalf of security, and therefore it is kosher. It is legitimate. So this set of beliefs, together with the collaboration of Israeli media, a private-owned media, commercial media, without any political agenda, except of pleasing the readers in most of the cases, or the viewers, which is the biggest collaborator of the occupation, or of the narrative of the occupation, a media which is very courageous when it comes to make really courageous researches against, in the investigations against the Prime Minister, the President, the Ministers, corruption, cigars of Netanyahu, champagne of Mrs. Netanyahu. They are really very courageous and really are leading many of the police interrogation which come after it. But when it comes to the occupation, silence. Either no coverage at all, or totally biased coverage, steadily, constantly, year after year, dehumanizing the Palestinians and demonizing them, not because of any kind of ideology, only because they know that this is what the readers and the viewers want to get, and nobody wants to bother them too much, because in Israel there is really a wall-to-wall agreement. Let's not bother ourselves too much with the occupation. And when I say wall-to-wall, it's the government, the army, the politicians, the readers, the writers, the editors. Almost everybody doesn't want to look at the elephant in the room because, it's not very pleasant. So the media is making it much easier for us to live in peace also with the occupation. And here we are getting this phenomena, this unbelievable phenomena, that Israelis stopped dealing with the occupation, stopped talking about it. I still remember the joke, some of you might remember, the two Israelis share 3 views to Today's three Israelis hardly share one view, and it will be always a very nationalistic, right-wing, many times militaristic view, with very few exceptions. To break this wall is almost impossible, and we should realize it. And therefore I would like to claim here tonight that there's no way to expect change from within the Israeli society. Life is too good and the brainwash system is too efficient. And there is no incentive for Israel to go for a change. And there is no incentive for Israelis to care about the occupation. Most of them have never seen it, most of them couldn't care less. Life is so good. Try to get a table in an Israeli restaurant. Try to go to the Israeli clubs, cafes. Try to listen to what people are talking about. The next vacation, the new Jeep, the salary, the new apartment, the new furnitures, totally individual, totally private lives, nothing or almost nothing concerning to some collective goals. And above all, nobody is asking, where are we going? Where are we aiming? This question is totally not discussed in Israeli society. You see it in campaigns to the elections, before the elections, when those questions are totally ignored. Nobody talks about them. And the question, where are we going to, must be referred to every Israeli, maybe to the right-wingers. What do you want? Because Israel never had made up its mind, what do we want? Yes, we want everything. We want a democracy and we want a Jewish state. We want the occupation and still be democratic. We want to have a Jewish state and still have 4.5 million Palestinians under our rule. And it's about time to tell ourselves, to tell the Israelis, and to tell Israel, you can't have it all. You can't have it all. And it's time, I think, to change the attitude toward Israel and to stop perceiving Israel as the only democracy in the Middle East and the great democracy of the Middle East. Yes, Israel is a democracy for Jewish citizens, even though there are many cracks now with this government. But Israel cannot continue to enjoy from all the worlds, to be hugged by the West as this liberal democracy, this villa in the jungle, as one of our politicians defined it, all those brutal regimes around us, surrounding us, and in the middle, this lighthouse of justice, this lighthouse of freedom, this lighthouse of democracy, when in the backyard, one of the most brutal tyrannies on earth today, and I stand behind each word. The Israeli occupation is one of the most brutal tyrannies on earth today, not less than this. I'm not exaggerating. Gaza, on one hand, is the biggest cage on earth. Gaza is the biggest experiment in human beings. Let's see what's happening when 2 million people are putting in a cage for 10, 11 years now. Let's see what's happening. The other day, in another place, a student stood up and she was about to cry and she asked the people to remember Gaza, and then she came up to me and she told me that she is here in Australia studying for a few years now, and her mother, a very young woman, got cancer, and she went to Gaza and she tried to get her out for months, and she failed, and the mother died in the age of 52, only because she couldn't get her out for any kind of treatment. And this reality is taking place now, day after day. The UN had declared Gaza as an unlivable place in the year of 2020. We are now, by the end of 2017, many people who come back from there are totally convinced that it is already an unlivable place, not only because of the environment which goes really to terrible places there, but also to what is happening to the social structures there. The Israeli psychologist who came back from the Palestinian Israeli, who interviewed many children in one of the refugee camps, told us that 1/3 of the children he met, and he's been there quite a long time, 1/3 of the children he met are victims of sexual harassment, because there is nobody to protect those children, because the parents are fighting for their survival, because family structures are falling apart, because there is a kind of anarchy which is not surprising anybody within the community. The famous solidarity of Palestinians and mainly of people of Gaza is falling apart. Everyone has to struggle for his own existence, and this is taking place now for 11 years, and the world does nothing. At the same time, the West Bank is in better shape than Gaza, but don't be wrong. None of us can imagine himself what does it mean to live under the Israeli occupation. None of us has experience, except of the Palestinians. None of us have the idea what does it mean to see your parents beaten or humiliated by soldiers who might come at night, tens of soldiers who will penetrate your home with dogs and try to arrest one of the family members without any legal supervision. None of us can imagine ourselves what does it mean to see your father or your brother or your son taken away, not knowing when and why will he be back. And this is happening on a daily basis. Israel is now arresting hundreds of Palestinians a week, with very little reason, some of them obviously political detainees, others for nothing, many of them children who don't get the basic rights according to the Israeli, like being accompanied by their parents, like being accompanied by a lawyer. None of this. This is happening every night. And we don't hear anything about it because the West Bank seems to be quite peaceful and quite doing well. But this is the reality for 50 years, my friends. 50 years. With better periods of time and worse periods of time, but always a brutal occupation. Always an inhuman, criminal, cruel occupation. And the occupation is there to stay. And we have to start to ask ourselves, what are we doing about it? And the traditional solution was always the two-state solution, obviously. I don't recall one issue in the world that the entire world agrees on it. Even Micronesia, which is Israel's second friend, is supporting the two-state solution, I was told. Everyone supports the two-state solution. Benjamin Netanyahu supports the two-state solution. Everyone supports the two-state solution. The only problem is that nobody does anything about the two-state solution. Not only nobody is doing anything about the two-state solution, Israel is doing everything possible to make it impossible. And I think, my friends, that it is about time, after 50 years, to make a reset, to ask ourselves how many more years we'll continue to say two-state solution, many times out of our sleep, without doing anything. When Israel is creating this irreversible reality, until we'll get to the conclusion that this does not work and never will work. How many years will we not understand that this train left the station and will never be back? It's a wonderful solution. Two peoples share one piece of land, let's divide the land and have two states. The Palestinians deserve it, the Israelis deserve it, let's do it. But with 700,000 settlers, the most powerful political pressure group in Israeli politics, a group that had blackmailed one government after the other in Israel, would it be Labour or Likud, a group which is ready to sacrifice, to fight, to struggle, all those things that other groups in society are not ready to do and not ready to sacrifice. With this number, with this figure of 700,000, including East Jerusalem, who is going to evacuate them? Who will have the political power to do so? And by the end of the day, we have to realize that they are there to stay, and they are powerful, and there will be no power to evacuate them. Without the full evacuation, there is no viable state, no viable Palestinian state. This must be clear. I know there are all kinds of experts who find all kinds of solutions. We'll build a tunnel under the mountain and a mountain under the tunnel, and there will be bridges. The Swiss cheese model, in which there is a kind of Palestinian state. You will have to travel from one town to the others through the ocean, maybe with a helicopter and submarine. This will not work, my friends. No way. It might be a settlement, but it will not last, exactly like the Oslo Accords. It will be really very encouraging. Maybe Abbas will sign on it, but it will not last. Because there is no viable Palestinian state on this little piece of land. Remember, we are dealing with 22% of the original Palestine. And now we are demanding the Palestinians to compromise those 22% and to accept the so-called blocks of settlements, which Israel declares is a full consensus, a world consensus, and the blocks are as big as you can imagine yourself, cutting the West Bank to pieces. The West Bank is separate, obviously, from Gaza. Gaza is totally not on the table. Nobody deals what will be in Gaza. Israel would love to push Gaza into Egyptian hands, but this will also not happen. And we have to realize that either it is already irreversible or very soon it will become irreversible. I don't know anyone who thinks that for a long time we can continue to talk about the two-state solution while this reality is on the ground. And therefore I would like to suggest to you tonight a new discourse. We have to change our discourse. And we have to start to speak about equal rights. Equal rights will lead us to one of two places. Israel will obviously object it automatically, hysterically. I always say that I represent like 10 Israelis who support it, but I include my partner who is Swedish, so it's only 9 Israelis who support the one-state solution. But it must start somewhere. And when we say equal rights, first of all we are challenging the Israelis. What will be the answer? Israel will say no. And when you say no to equal rights, you declare yourself as an apartheid state, period. Officially, formally, you are an apartheid state. If you say that one people is privileged over the other forever, it looks like apartheid, it walks like apartheid, it is apartheid. And those of you who lived in South Africa and claim that there is nothing to compare, it should not be identical in order to be very similar. There are certain things that the apartheid regime was maybe better, and there were many things that Israel's occupation is worse than the apartheid system in South Africa. And in any case, when one people is privileged and the other has no rights, this is apartheid. So if Israel will say no to equal rights, the world will have to realize that we are facing a new apartheid state in the 21st century. And then the question is to all of us, will we live in peace with an apartheid system? Why would we do the same that we have done with the former apartheid system, which was very, very efficient? I know that South Africa of today is suffering for so many troubles and difficulties, but no one can deny it that South Africa of 2017 is a more just place than South Africa of 1985. And nobody can claim that what is happening in South Africa was unthinkable in 1985. Remember those words from the white community in South Africa that there will be a bloodbath, that all the white people will be slaughtered. It didn't happen. And all those pessimistic forecasts, the pessimistic visions, which have only one goal, to paralyze any change, not always happen. So we have to start to talk, in my view, about equal rights, and to see how does it push Israel to change its policy. Now, talking will not be enough, as we all know. The world tried for 50 years to deal Israel with carrots, to promise Israel that if it only will do peace, everything will be good, but it's not enough to push Israel for putting an end to the occupation. No way. And those who believe that continuing to hug the occupation and to hug Israel will lead us to anywhere, look at the last 50 years. Benjamin Netanyahu came back from this country like he never came back. He was really in a hangover for days after the visit in Australia recently. He never had such good time, I think, in the last 10 years. And I think the role of the world is not to enable Netanyahu to feel so comfortable and so pleased by his policy and any other Israeli government's policy. And I truly believe that if we realize that change will not come from within Israel, if we truly believe that the apartheid system is something unacceptable in the 21st century, so it's about the world to do something. Governments will not do anything. It must come from civil societies. The pressure must come from those who stand for justice, those who stand for consciousness, those who care about this cage in Gaza, or about these occupied territories in the West Bank, or about the refugee camps. If there would have been an American president who would really like to put an end to the occupation would have come to its end within months. Within months. But there was never an American president who really was devoted to do so. And if Barack Obama didn't do it, I don't see anyone else who will do it. I happened to realize that each time I'm mentioning the name Donald Trump, the audience immediately starts to laugh. So I don't have to explain why this man, who has nothing to do with human rights, justice, minorities, Palestinians, we can't really take him seriously for bringing a solution to the Palestinian problem or to make justice. And therefore, my only hope is from civil societies, and from their wake up, which will push governments, I hope, to make Israel accountable for the crimes of the occupation, to make each of us Israelis pay a price for the occupation because we don't, to make each of us Israelis, because we all carry responsibility. I once said, we are all settlers. We all carry the responsibility for it. And someone has to take us accountable. And someone has to come to us and say, yes, you did this and you are going to pay for this. And until this will not happen, nothing will change. And I want to say last word about friendship to Israel. Because I know that in this country, many define themselves as Israeli friends. And this should be highly appreciated. But supporting Israel automatically and blindly is not friendship to Israel. I'm sorry. And this notion that I heard here, Israel right or wrong, is a coward and immoral way of thinking. Because Israel is wrong. Israel is not right or wrong. Israel is wrong. Something went wrong. And real friends should raise their voice against it. And this notion that, yeah, but let's not speak about it outside. What is it? What do we have to hide? And how are we going to change it if not speak about it? If not raise our voice? And especially in a friendly country like Australia, if there will be more voices telling the truth, criticizing what should be criticized, then maybe more Israelis will ask if it's also Australia. Will we label also Australia as an anti-Semite country? Because Israeli propaganda is a very, very efficient answer to all the criticism. We immediately label them as anti-Semites. And by this, we are totally protected, all terrorists. And by this, we are totally protected. It's not our blame, it's their blame. Look at the world. The whole world is against us. And we stop listening to any criticism, which is unacceptable. There is no country which is beyond criticism, for sure not an occupying country. So even in this country, I think that those accusations of being anti-Semite should not paralyze anybody. There is anti-Semitism, sure there is. By the way, part of it is fueled by Israel's policies. I think that the policies of Israel create more troubles to Jewish communities over the world than anything else right now. We have to remember this. And those who care about Israel are or should be the first ones to raise their voices against. Because look what is happening inside Israel. Look how the occupation is destroying Israel from within. And I don't put everything on the occupation, by all means not. But to continue to support it automatically and blindly without even daring to criticize, to continue those bribery missions, and I have no other word to call it, of sending parliamentarians and journalists, most of them totally ignorant, and brainwashing them in 1 week of 5-star hotel in Israel, and they come back fascinated and brainwashed. What cannot be defined but bribery, and I'm amazed that journalists collaborate with it and politicians collaborate with this, and I see the effect. I met so many of them who came back from there. They are just citing Israeli propaganda, like parrots. I mean, nothing. Whatever they heard, that's the truth. Is it the right way to get to any kind of solution? Is it the right way to change things? And this continues and continues. I know that I'm not a man of hope tonight here, and I, in my last sentences, would like to do my best to find some kind of hope, because by the end of the day, the Palestinian colleague, Dr. Afif Safia, he claims that only optimists are doing history, and God knows how much I would like to make history, even though I have no chance, because I'm really a devoted pessimist. And until now, all my forecasts were always wrong. It was always worse than I thought. But still, we can't say goodbye without having some kind of hope. And therefore, I would like to say here that first of all, I know what happened to me when I started to change the discourse and to speak about a new idea or a new vision. It opened me up. Because I always knew that the two-state solution is a bluff, but I could never really admit it. And I started to support the two-state solution where very few Israelis supported it. And I truly thought that maybe it will lead us to somewhere. But opening up to new ideas is the best way to keep hope. But this is not enough. I want to remind you here that the biggest developments in history were always unexpected. If we would have gathered here in the late 80s, and I would have told you that within months, apartheid system is going to fall, Soviet Russia is going to fall, and the Berlin Wall is going to fall, within months, I can assure you, you would have never invited me again. Because this man is out of his mind. Who has foreseen it? Nobody. Who can see, when you see a strong, big, tall tree standing so wonderfully in a garden or in the street, and one day the street falls, and then you look inside the tree, and you realize it was totally rotten from inside. And I can hardly think about something which is more rotten morally than the Israeli occupation. Maybe this is the hope. And if all this is not enough to create some kind of hope, then I can only cite someone else who said once that in this part of the world, in the Middle East, one should be realistic enough to believe in miracles. What do we need more than miracles? Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for these words. I don't mind hearing it again and again. I think we all need to hear this message as many times as possible, and hopefully one day this world's going to wake up to the realities that you speak of and to actually doing something about the situation over there. I'd like to start maybe by asking a few questions before I throw it to the floor. And I'd like to start with the question of how do you view a co-struggle that involves Palestinians and Israelis on the ground, and if you have seen such a co-struggle, to maybe share with us what is needed for this kind of relationship to work, and do you see it as a necessary thing to do in the current circumstances?
First of all, it was happening for many years, and it was very courageous, but it unfortunately didn't lead to anywhere. And you know better than me that today there are very few Palestinians who would collaborate in such a struggle. Because the Palestinians, rightly so, are sick and tired from all these ways. They don't make any more the differentiation between liberals and leftists and right-wingers. They had it enough for 40 years. They tried almost everything, and it led them to nowhere. So you see now more and more phenomena of really resistance to any kind of collaboration with Israelis or cooperation, to any kind of normalization with Israelis. And I must tell you, I understand it. It's not very clever, but I totally understand it. When my colleague Amira Haas was kicked out from Birzeit University, I mean, there are not many bigger friends of the Palestinian struggle than Amira Haas. And they asked her to leave the hall. And I think it's really stupid and also very humiliating from her point of view, and still I understand it. Yes, we all carry the responsibility and we all should pay the price. And I fully understand the Palestinian who comes and tells me, listen, I don't want to hear from you. All Israelis are responsible. All Israelis are accountable.
So there are no examples currently of co-struggle protests?
There are. Still there are. There is the forum of parents who lost their children, Palestinians and Israelis. And there are many other devoted Israeli groups. Some of you know about them, from Breaking the Silence to Ta'ayush, to Physicians for Human Rights, for Rabbis for Human Rights, and to Mahsomoj, and many other devoted groups. But by the end of the day, we should be realistic. As devoted as they are totally delegitimized in Israeli society and Israeli media, and therefore their effect is very, very small. And I don't see that the change will come from there. The change must come now from the outside with the support of those elements. But don't expect them to be the change. It will not work. They are facing a wall of iron.
Now you have said previously that BDS is the only game in town. It's the Palestinian Civil Society's call for boycotts, divestments, and sanctions. Here in Melbourne, as in other parts of Australia and in other parts of the world, Jewish communities have been very scared and misunderstood a great deal about the BDS call. So what would you say to the Jewish community in Melbourne today about the BDS call and the role that it plays?
I would say that first of all, it's not easy for me to call others to boycott Israel when I don't boycott Israel. I live there. And it's also, I must tell you frankly, it's not very simple from a moral point of view, psychological point of view, to call others to boycott your own country, which you still care and have no intentions to leave. And therefore, it took me some years until I really realized that this is, as you just quoted me, sorry for the lack of modesty, the only game in town. Because it's the only effective tool right now. You want the proof? Look how nervous and aggressive the Israelis and the Jewish communities became. Look this unbelievable process of now criminalizing BDS. There are legislations all over, let's not speak about it because the Australians will adopt it immediately. In the United States, in certain states, it became illegal to support boycotts. What does it mean? And to my Jewish friends, I would say Israel is calling the world to boycott Iran, to boycott Hamas, to put sanctions. When Russia innovated Crimea, within weeks the EU put sanctions on Russia. What is more democratic than to decide to boycott something which is immoral in your eyes? Some of us think seriously about animals' rights, and they will never buy in shops that sell meat. Would anybody think that there is something immoral or criminal in boycotting butcheries? Some of us think that what is happening in the sweatshops in North-South Asia is almost slavery, and they would never buy products from there. Would anybody think to criminalize those people? Those are people of conscience. You shouldn't agree with them. But to blame them for doing something wrong, you make your choice. Me, for example, I don't like to buy products from stolen lands or products which are stolen by themselves. And I think that buying products from the occupied territories is buying stolen products. What is immoral, what is criminal in this? So each of us can make his own choice, BDS yes, BDS no. What is unacceptable is to think that there is something not legitimate in this non-violent, democratic tool of civil societies, not only to speak but also to do something. And if you want to know if it is effective or not, look what it did to South Africa. It was so effective in South Africa. With BDS, the economical effect until now is limited, but the psychological effect is growing from day to day. And I must tell you, it is the only game in town, yeah? It is the only game in town right now.
Thank you for that. One other question, I'm curious, you're a journalist, and we've seen so many changes to the way journalism has been conducting itself, especially with the rise of social media. And so I'd like to just hear from you your thoughts on how that might have impacted, if it has at all, the public opinion inside, in Israel, the Israeli public opinion, especially during the war on Gaza. How does social media play a role in the Palestine-Israel conflict, both internally and externally?
Unfortunately, it's mainly a destructive role, but we can't help it and I wouldn't fight against it. First of all, everyone becomes a journalist. And everyone's thoughts are equal to anyone's else, which is nice. But there is no hierarchy, there is no fact findings, there is no professional journalism. Everything can be published. I mean, I remember the other day, someone published that my father was a collaborator with the Nazis. Now, what do you do with this? No newspaper or radio station or TV station would ever dare to publish such a thing without some kind of basis, factual basis.
But yet the media in Israel, is it publishing factual basis?
Look, if you take this is a very good question, and I try to explain my view about Israeli media as a big collaborator with the occupation, but still, they would never publish something specific about someone which has no base. In social media you can do everything you want. I'll give you another example. Twice I wrote in my lifetime, maybe more, but I remember twice I wrote about the Israeli pilots. In each war in Gaza, almost the same article. The first war in Gaza, we shouldn't call it war, we should call it an attack, because there was not really war, there are not two armies fighting there exactly, even though Israel is describing it as heroic battles, but we are dealing with a brutal attack on total helpless forces. The first time I wrote this article, I saw that the pilots, if there are hundreds and hundreds of children and women who are killed by bombs and missiles, someone has to be accountable for this. And the pilots are those who push the button. I wrote it in the first war in Gaza, and it was a regular reaction. In 2014, I wrote almost the same article again, with a little bit more provocative, a little bit more anger. It was after a night that I was exposed to horrible pictures from Gaza in Al Jazeera, really things that I never saw before. And I saw those pilots who are the elite of Israeli society. Those wonderful people who speak so nicely, they're so intelligent, and then they go to the university and they become really the most advanced Israelis and high-tech and everything. They should be taken accountable. Yes, they don't see what they're doing. They see just black spots in their joystick or in their electronic devices that they are operating. And I wrote what I wrote about what I think about the pilots and their role. And it became, within hours, people who never heard that there is a newspaper called Haaretz, who don't know to spell the word Haaretz, came to me. I remember in the morning I was interviewed. I went to Ashkelon, which is a town in the south part of Tel Aviv, which was exposed to rockets from Gaza. I went to see what's going on there, and all of a sudden people were attacking me physically in a way I never saw before, and they were all heading the social media that I wrote that the pilots are murderers. This is the only thing they got. And then I realized, and later on I needed bodyguards, and it became really tough to go out to the street. And in 2014, tolerance in Israeli public opinion stopped. People, first time in the history of Israel, were afraid to go to demonstrate against the war, afraid physically. And this is a pure product of social media. But let's remember, A, we can't help it, and secondly, there is also some good aspects of social media, because it brings more information, more voices. We know all this. So we can't choose. Social media is there, and we have to cope with it.
Thank you. We're going to open it now for questions from the floor.
So you'll be directing Julie and myself with the mics, but can we just be clear, where there's 220 people here, you've got to have a question. The other 219 people in the room want to hear from Gideon, not from yourself. So short, sharp questions, not commentary. Where do you want to go?
Okay, so let me just say, so we'll start here. There was a hand up, no?
Yeah.
We'll do one by one.
We'll take 3 by 3.
So I need your pen and your paper. That's the condition.
We'll take 3 by 3.
Whatever.
So we'll take 3 and then...
So 1, 2, 3?
Yep, that's good.
Well, at first I have 2 questions to ask. You mentioned that Netanyahu supports the state solution. Before he's supposed to be elected, Netanyahu promised the Israeli people, if you elect me, there will be no two-state solution, and that's why they elected him. So he's actually against two-state solution, because he promised them, if you elect me, I will promise you there will be no two-state solution. And that's why he was elected. So everybody shares that. That's not the question. The question is, when in 2014, when Israel was informed by the UN, do not hit where the UNRWA is. There's only women and children there. They warned 17 times Israel, do not hit, only women and children there. Only women and children. Even 1 hour before they hit, They will warn, don't hit. And they still hit. The question is, nobody in the world done anything about it.
Job done.
Nobody.
There was no question. Let's make sure the
And
actual...
I'll ask you why.
Why did no one do anything?
Why
That was the
nobody?
question. Why did nobody react?
Yeah, like UN. When UN, nobody.
Job done.
Nobody hold them accountable.
Okay.
Gideon, I have to share with you a great pain that I have felt by myself. I thought I was very alone. And then you were interviewed by Stephen Sacker, and you shared with me that pain. And I wonder if at some stage you might comment on it. And that is when you have grandchildren in my case, children in your case, and they go to war as soldiers in a war that you can't do anything for the province, and how that plays out. Personally.
The gentleman back there. It's on. It's ready to go. Just get it close to the mouth.
I have to begin my question by saying I can't miss the opportunity to express my huge admiration for you and for Amira Haas. I can't imagine what it's like to deal walking down the street for you and what you do. I have huge admiration. I've got two associated questions about the immediate term. First is about Netanyahu. Your paper says that he needs a war. And there's a plausible explanation about why. I wonder if you could give us some background on that. The second part of the second question is about the current situation of the PLO. What sort of authority do they have? What sort of impact do you think they may have? What sort of, how do you assess the PLO, the neutral of the PLO, the new PLO leadership?
Yeah. Can you find some more simple questions? Netanyahu was supporting the two-state solution, but nobody can take him seriously because not only he never repeated it, he practically said it only once. And ever since then he did anything possible to not only not do something to promote this idea, but to do anything possible to sabotage it. So nobody takes this declaration seriously anymore, and rightly so, as you say. He also retreated from it, and he said it will never happen. But I'm not sure that I took him seriously even when he said so, but you know, I gave him a chance. But today nobody seriously thinks that Netanyahu is for the two-state solution. That's really the joke of the year. It is very, very painful to see how the world kept silent after the horrific scenes in Gaza in 2014. It is really, really, really depressing. And I must tell you, even now, I just heard from an NGO, from an Australian who runs an NGO, they were trying to send seeds to Gaza, seeds. And the Jewish lobby here did everything possible to prevent it, and you know what? They succeeded. And I really ask myself, there will not be a stage that people will get to some basic humanity. They will always worship this propaganda about the Palestinians who are launching rockets on Israel, the security, the fact that they are all terrorists. Nothing will touch them, nothing will make them think maybe Israel is doing something wrong. Maybe the Palestinians deserve seeds. It's unbelievable how brainwash can really kill the conscience of people who I'm sure have conscience. And it's really, when it comes to Gaza, when it comes to the pictures from Gaza, today and in 2014 much more, but even today, when you see the photos, when you hear from people who have been there, how indifferent can human beings remain? How many excuses will the Israeli propaganda still create to justify every step of Israel?
So
It's unbelievable,
why
I
no one's
must tell
holding them
you.
accountable? You didn't answer my question. Why no one's holding them accountable?
I refer the question to you, I return it to you. Your guess is as good as mine. I don't know. And it frustrates me exactly like you. Unless you are from Gaza, and then I don't compare myself to you.
Actually, I was born in Palestine. I'm Palestinian.
Okay.
I grew up all my life there.
Thank you, Gideon.
Yeah, about our children, grandchildren, that's always the question. Why do I stay there? I was asked so many times, and really I never had the slightest intention to leave. Because that's my place. Why do I continue the struggle? Because I have no other choice. Because, you know, I thought once to become a restaurant critic. But then I didn't find it so interesting. So I'm back on track. I really don't have any other choice. After what I've seen in the last 30 years, you cannot remain silent, you cannot remain passive, and we continue. And we continue also to tell our children, each of us with his own words, go to the army or don't go to the army, refuse or not refuse, struggle or not struggle. But finally we are there, and we are trying, the very few of us who are there, is trying to make a change in a very, very unsuccessful way, unfortunately. Netanyahu, until now, was very careful in launching wars. This is the only good thing I can say about this man, that he was quite careful. He talked a lot and he did relatively little. So I'm not sure that he will go for a war now, but you know, he's in such troubles that it might happen, obviously. Attacking Iran was prevented only by some other forces in the Israeli security establishment. He was pushing very hard to attack Iran. Maybe he did so because he knew that there was those who will stop him. I don't know. But by the end of the day, I'm not sure a war will really serve his purposes. None of Israeli politicians have ever gained something from a war. This is not enough to make them not go for wars, as we know, but they didn't earn much politically. Golda Meir lost all her career, and so did Moshe Dayan for a while. In the Yom Kippur War, Ariel Sharon lost his career for a while because of the Lebanese War, and others didn't come in flying colors from any of the wars, because none of the wars was not only not justified, but also not successful. Let's remember, Israel is not doing so well in wars. It kills a lot of civilians, it kills a lot of children, but the political outcome is very, very dull, as we know, and very, very little. About the PLO or the PA, look, the Palestinians are today in one of the weakest points, let's face it. They are divided. Their world has different issues, other issues, as we know. Israel succeeded to really separate the Palestinian people to so many fragments, the diaspora and the Palestinians in the occupied territories, Gaza and the West Bank, Jerusalem and the West Bank, the 48 Palestinians and the 67 Palestinians, a big mess, and the Palestinian people is falling apart. The second Intifada left them bleeding without the leadership, without the spirit of struggle for many years. It was a catastrophe from their point of view. So many were killed, so many were arrested, and right now they are really lacking a real new leadership. But by the end of the day, let's remember, the key is not in their hands. I wish it was, but it's not in their hands. And therefore, let's not aim any criticism. They are making many mistakes, but really, you can't criticize the occupied. Let's deal with the occupied.
So we have 3 questions, 2 in the back, and 1 was in the front right here.
Who in the back?
Yep, standing now.
Standing now.
And the one in the gray shirt next.
Nasser, I didn't know that Palestinian men obey so much to Palestinian women.
This is how we're going to do things.
The strongest in the world.
I just want to congratulate you for your extremely courageous stand, particularly since I think you are risking your life in Israel in many ways. I just want to say that the strategy that you are proposing is very good. It's just a question of how do we implement these PDS in the West and in other countries, and also how does one penetrate the kind of a consciousness within Israel which is so intransigent to any form of recognizing the other as human. And I'm saying this, I'll just say one more thing. I come from a Holocaust survivor family, and I'm extremely ashamed and have been for a long time in terms of what the Israeli state is doing to Palestinians.
There was one the one in the grey shirt was next.
Very quickly. Thank you very much for coming tonight and addressing us. I wanted to ask you your opinion on two matters. One, your opinion about Barak and Olmert and offering the Palestinians 94% of the West Bank, East Jerusalem as a capital, plus a few other things I can think of right now, but there were offers made and they were all rejected. And the other one, you mentioned the Gaza war, that the Israelis have killed so many more Palestinians than the other way around. But isn't that because there was the Iron Dome, which deflected missiles coming from Gaza, and because of the boycott, the Gazans were not as armed as they wish they were. I'm sure
Okay, that's your question.
Okay.
Pass it to the man in front of you.
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to thank you for the insights on the social and psychological aspects. I'm really interested to know about your thoughts politically about the Arab world, about Israeli surroundings. It's changed significantly in the last 10 years in terms of Egypt revolution, Syria war, change of leadership, Iraq, Lebanon stability. Does that affect Israel in any way, short to medium term? Yeah.
And one more.
Thanks, Gideon. Just if you could comment on the notion that the Israeli High Court is a check on the Israeli government and the state in general.
Say it again, I'm sure.
If you could comment on the notion that the High Court in Israel is a check on the actions of the government and the state.
Yes, I try to do it as possible. So many people.
There are some media reports about... There's no more questions. No, we're done. No, we're done. You just wait for the next round.
You are so much in the dark. But he should get the right in the next debate. You are the chairman.
Yes.
First of all, I share the same shame. Maybe shame and guilt are the emotions which motivate me in all those years. And I'm never ashamed to say that I'm ashamed. Yes, I'm ashamed in many ways. And I feel deep guilt now the Palestinian people ever since what happened in 48. And maybe that's the fuel that motivates me. And this I say to the son of the Holocaust survivors who feels the same. We are sharing the same emotions. How to spread the ideas. If I would have known, I wouldn't have been here today. I would have spread the ideas everywhere. It's very hard and it will be a long way to go and we have to start it. And as I say, I think it should start here and in Europe and the United States. It's very hard to start it in Israel right now because Israel is really turning a blind eye, turning its back. That all those questions can hardly be discussed. Except of Haaretz, which is really the only newspaper that covers those issues, that deals with those issues, that gives some kind of platform to raise ideas. But Haaretz is a small island. Except of Haaretz, nobody deals with those issues in Israel at all, and you can hardly raise your voice about any of those issues. Who cares about them?
Can you just give us an idea of the leadership of Haaretz compared to
Something very interesting happened because the readership of the print is quite limited. It's tens of thousands, I don't know. We have now a special subscription for the weekend edition, so it's double more, but it's somewhere between 40, 50, 60,000 copies print, but it is still the elite. Haaretz was never a popular newspaper, it was very influential because the elite used to read it. Something like the New York Times, but in a much smaller scale. But what happened is that the digital brought us a huge readership all over the world, and the fact that we are both in Hebrew and in English. The other day someone asked me if Haaretz is also appearing in Hebrew. I mean, Haaretz is a Hebrew newspaper which is translated into English. And, but that's so wonderful, and you're really reaching our audiences in millions. I mean, someone told me that it is around 3 million abroad and 2 million in Israel different users who get to Haaretz, which is very encouraging, I must say. What is less encouraging is the question about Barak and Olmert offering 94%. I'll be brief about it. There are many versions about what happened. Olmert was a politician in his last weeks or months, and the Palestinians knew it. Olmert went very soon after this to court and to jail. I truly believe that if Olmert wouldn't have had those troubles, maybe things could have moved. But as far as I know, Olmert never got an answer, neither yes or no, because also Abbas knew that it's meaningless. About Barak, we know very well that the Camp David conference or meeting was really just to push Arafat to the corner without any preparation, take it or leave it, when many other issues like the return were just put off the table, and he was incapable in this stage to say yes, and we couldn't expect him to say yes. And this brings me to something else that I said before. Forcing a Palestinian leader to sign on surrender is counterproductive also for Israel, because it will not lead to any solution, and we saw it in Camp David and in Oslo. So wherever the suggestion of Israel were, the fact is that no Israeli government stopped the settlements, and if no Israeli government stopped the settlements, it means that no Israeli government meant to put an end to the occupation, because you don't build settlements in order to evacuate them. Yeah. As for the siege and the missiles and all those things, and the rockets, by the end of the day, we taught the people of Gaza one lesson. If you will launch rockets on Israel, Israel and the world will have some kind of interest in it. If you sit still in the cage, nobody will care about it. Yeah. That's the lesson. And that's a horrifying lesson. And let's remember that those rockets, as fearful as they are the most primitive weapon that human being can manufacture. And the fact is that they hardly kill. They were aiming to kill, no doubt. But did we really leave them any other alternative? There are now 3 years of silence. Did they achieve anything out of those 3 years? 3 years, there's almost no rockets. And what? And you know what? Very soon they will realize that if they don't do something, the cage will remain a cage. Believe me that if it depends on the world, on Israel and on Egypt, Gaza will be put in a cage forever. And we have to realize it. What's happening around us, thank you, what's happening around us, I really am not an expert for the Arab world, and I know one thing, that Israel has now this wet dream to make peace with this liberal regime of Saudi Arabia, this unbelievable moderate democracy with all those values, and we make peace with them, and there will be a Saudi Arabian embassy in Tel Aviv, and the people will go to the streets. We have peace with Saudi Arabia, and fuck, excuse me for the word. All the others. So I can say only one thing. What's going on around us is very dramatic, and it can lead to many developments. Iran and Russia in Syria is something very dramatic. War or no war between Saudi Arabia and Iran. The Saudis would love Israel to make the dirty job for them. The Israelis would love to see the Saudis to make the dirty work for them, and by the end of the day we should remember one fact: there is no bypass of getting a solution to the Palestinian problem. All those terrible things are very interesting. Nothing will bring Israel to get away from facing the fact that it is an occupying force, and it continues to be an occupying force. And as for the Supreme Court of Israel, I'm very sorry to say that this is one of the greatest fig leaves of Israel, of Israeli democracy. Now it is under attack of this government, so all of a sudden the Supreme Court is being portrayed in flying colors, but by the end of the day, the Supreme Court of Israel, which is quite courageous and highly appreciated in the legal community all over the world, by the end of the day, this Supreme Court is one of the collaborators with the occupation. And one day, when history will judge each of us for the occupation, the media will be blamed, and obviously the politicians and the generals and everybody, and there will be a special chapter about the Supreme Court, who almost never stopped anything when it concerns the occupation.
So we've got
The very last question.
more. There's one in the back, there's one in the front, and there's one in the middle here. Okay, so they there.
What about the discriminated gentleman? We will never know how he looks.
Start with the back.
Are you real? Are you real? Yes.
There are some recent media reports talk about a kind of a deal between Egypt and Israel, where a major exchange of land in Sinai and especially that adjacent land next to the Gaza Strip. Do you think that kind of a deal is politically viable? Will it happen? Thank you very much.
Yeah, this is okay. I was just wondering, obviously I don't expect you to have any sort of crystal ball in terms of predicting the future for, I assume that you see the one-state solution as, if not inevitable, then at least very likely. I'm wondering what you believe the fate of the disintegration of, since this implies some sort of disintegration of the Palestinian Authority, whether you envision this as them deliberately facilitating the transfer of power to the Israeli state, or if it will be more of a Berlin Wall moment where it's kind of a, like a more chaotic thing, and then what you expect would be the outcome of that. Thank you.
Your son's English is so complicated and so rich that you can't understand the word. So can you translate it to me? That was Samar Sad.
So he was basically saying, if in the case of a transfer of power towards the one-state solution or towards the next phase, do you envision that the PA would ever cede its authority? Would it happen? Would it cause a vacuum? Would it cause chaos? And I think that's really.
Or would they facilitate the transfer?
Or would Israel, would the PA facilitate its own?
I was born from the Australian accent and finally have a problem with the Palestinians.
Thank you so much for tonight. And as a Swedish Israeli, I'd like to meet with your wife after. Great. I have a question from someone else who wanted me to ask for you. In a recent 6 months period, Israeli forces have seized or demolished 117 European-funded humanitarian projects for Palestinians. A photo of a solar power installation, stripped of panels and the frames left empty and forlorn, is particularly graphic. Also, in a recent 6 months period, Israeli authorities reportedly rejected permits for more than 90% requests for buildings in Palestinian communities in Area C. It seems impossible to conclude other than this is oppression for the sake of oppression. What should we in Australia do? Should we complain to Israel's Ministry of Foreign Affairs or somewhere else?
Yes, I'm interested to know if there is any political party, political grouping or civil society organisation in Israel that shares your vision, which you think would be worth supporting, that we could find out about.
Yeah. That's the last one?
That's the last one.
Okay. So, about Sinai and all kinds of deals with the Egyptians, again, all those details try to make us ignore the core issue. The core issue I try to describe here. The Israeli wet dream would be to push Gaza to Egypt. There is even a more outrageous idea to create a Palestinian state in Sinai. All those deals, or so-called deals, or ideas, will never change the reality that the Palestinians are there to stay. So there is no people in the world who is so attached to its own land like the Palestinians, generation after generation. Israelis had the dream that maybe we'll tyrannize them for so many years until they will give up and leave. It never happened. We had the idea that maybe some miracles, speaking about miracles, will happen and they will just vanish. It didn't happen. They are attached to their land, and no Sinai and no deals will change it, and we better realize it. They are there to stay, and it is their full right. To your complicated English question, where did you study such English?
It's ANU.
Do you understand what it talks about? If I understood well after I got the proper translation, I can tell you that the PA, it's not for me to say. I don't even know if it's right, because many times there was the idea to dismantle the PA. The PA is a collaborator of the Israeli occupation. And let's, put the key on the table and tell Israel, because it's unprecedented that there is an occupation which doesn't have to run anything. I mean, the PA is doing the job no cost. Education, health services, everything, the PA is taking care. Not only this, the PA is the biggest collaborator with Israel's security agencies, and maybe it's time to tell to the PA, listen, go, resign, put the key on the table, as we say in Hebrew, and tell the Israelis, but I know what will be the outcome. The Israelis couldn't care less about health, about education, about transportation, about all those roles, and finally, the Palestinians will suffer more. If you are speaking about the longer term, for sure, if we go to the one-state solution, the PA will have to be dismantled. And this is one of the reasons why the PA objects so much the one-state solution. Because it means admitting that their struggle failed. Because they were fighting for the two-state solution now 30, 40 years, and they will have to admit that it failed. I can very easily understand the difficulty in admitting that your life project failed. On the other hand, this is not a reason to continue with the old song when it's totally irrelevant anymore. Yes, the destructions of solar and other devices which were donated by the West, by European governments and others, by the Israeli army, passes almost with total indifference by the governments who donated the money. By the end of the day, this is the taxpayers' money who was invested in the West Bank, and Israel just destroyed it like nothing. So a few weeks ago there was a very interesting case in which the Dutch government, and maybe it should be a case study for us, the Dutch government complained and protested in the ears of Israeli officials for destroying solar energy devices from some communities in the West Bank. And you know what? Israel returned those solar devices. Yes, miracles. Again, miracles. You see, always miracles. And Israel returned it. The only problem is in this country, I don't see the Australian Foreign Ministry complaining about anything that Israel did. So, but that's really about, you are taxpayers, you live in this country, it's really not for me to say. Is there an organization in Israel who supports my views or is sharing? It's not my views, I didn't invent anything. There are, as I say, some very courageous organizations, and it's really touching and encouraging to see how they struggle, and it will be very, very good to support them. And the names, you all know the names, I mentioned them before. But remember, by the end of the day, I think, if I may say so, the real struggle is now here, more than there. The real struggle must be now from the outside. We should support all those progressive elements for sure, but they will not make the change. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm too old, maybe I'm too pessimistic, but as I see it right now, I don't see it. I'm very frank with you. I don't see those devoted organizations making a change, succeeding to stand in front of this machinery that I tried to describe here today and really go for the change. And really, my deep friends, my close friends, we don't have time to waste because the suffer, the agony is on a daily basis. And while we are speaking here, this reality is not only getting closer to its end, it's getting farther and farther and farther. And therefore, if I would have you, if I may suggest, try to struggle from here before anything else. Israel must be taken accountable for the crimes that never stopped and will never stop until Israel will be taken accountable.
For these words. It's been an absolute honor and privilege for me to listen to you and to share this platform with you. I'm going to hand over to Nasser.
Thank you so much, and a big round of applause. If I may first apologise for my curtness without questions. We just have spent 3 days in Adelaide with people making outlandish statements and not actually asking a question. Also, forgive us for cramming you in so quickly and insisting that you take your seats in an orderly fashion. If I can ask you to take anything away from tonight, and anything away from Gideon's message, it's to get involved and be active, to do something. The Australian Jewish Democratic Society, which is a fantastic and very progressive Jewish organisation founded and based out of Melbourne, they're having their annual fundraising dinner on the 10th of December. You can search ajds.org.au, find details, join their mailing list, join the group, be part of that. Join ACAN, the Australian Palestine Advocacy Network, .org.au, join as a member. But also think on a personal level what you can do. And we're asking you to be evangelical. We're asking you to be evangelical because not only the Palestinians, and the brutality of the occupation in Gaza and the West Bank is brutal for the Palestinians, but if you're a friend of Jewish people, we need to save them too. And be evangelicals within your own communities. At APAN, we can help you with movie nights or street stalls, Palestinian fair trade products. If there's any myriad of things that we can do. On your way out, there's a stall with Palestinian fair trade products, as well as some information about some solidarity groups you might choose to join. I'll say again, become evangelical, please. Don't miss an opportunity to tell a friend or an acquaintance about the injustice that's occurring and what they can do. And finally, don't leave tonight before making a determination as to what your next action is going to be. We need you. Thank you again.